Here's our cold opener.
It should be a freezing opener.
Oh wait, before we do that, did you see the video I sent to you of Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yes.
So good. What did he call him did he call him a bastard or a son of a bitch? I can't remember.
I'd have to go back and watch it again.
I think Arnold called him like, "You son of a bitch." It was so funny. It was so funny because I loved it. I was like, "Oh, I knew that you would love it. I knew that you would love that video." And
I think Michael Keaton. So I don't remember if it was in that video, but I saw an image of Michael Keaton's response or watching it.
Yeah,
priceless. I think it was in that video too.
They do show him. They do show him. They cut to him at one point, but I just thought it was so great. They're both standing up there, and we're all thinking twins, and it's just like we were both defeated by Batman. And then the whole thing of how were you defeated? That was a good bit too.
Yeah, it was.
So,
I love both of them anyway, but I've grown to respect Arnold even more over time than I did initially. Like I didn't have any issues with him at all. I just didn't really equate him to anything more than an actor. But the person he is, I definitely respect.
Yeah, I actually really like Arnold. That's the thing about it's interesting. I did like I think I sent you this picture, but as the camera bumps on the iPhone got bigger and bigger, somebody made a phone case with a picture of Arnold holding like some gun
from Commando
some movie. Is it from Commando?
Yeah.
And they make it. It's made in such a way that the cameras on the camera bump look like the opening of the barrels. It's so good. And there's a picture of him with a big cigar in his mouth with that camera case, and he's just like, "This is amazing," It's so cool. I like that. I liked it, but anyway, I just wanted to.
I mean, we can use that as the cold open, and then can transition to something completely off.
Because I think we were just very much, we were talking about Pop-Tarts at that point. Because you sent me a meme about Pop-Tarts, and then I realized it really ties in nicely with the notes that I had from last time that we didn't get to, and because I told you I could talk for hours about what did I think I said?
I think it was food and surgery or something like that.
Sugary, empty calorie breakfast foods.
It's funny, I actually meant to respond to with could Pop-Tarts and toaster strudels be considered ravioli?
I've heard that, and I
mean, technically, I don't think you could go either one because it's a pastry instead of a pasta. But
right.
you can blur that definition quite a bit. Sorry, I don't want to derail it for sure, but it just made me remember that I meant to respond with that and forgot to.
It's they're envelopes of food. They're food envelopes with other food in them. So if we're calling that, so what is a Pop-Tart? How so I know like ravioli. That's what is.
Well, a Pop-Tart would be some sugary flavor-filled pastry, right?
Well, okay, so what kind of... so let me rephrase the question. I mean, what is... Oh, so I looked up the definition of ravioli, and then I'll rephrase my question, or I could rephrase my question and then tell you the definition of ravioli. It's all up to you.
Either way.
So ravioli is small pasta envelopes containing ground meat, cheese, or vegetables. That's the Oxford. That's the definitions from Oxford Languages.
And I just want to point out there is also a generalized definition that has been posted. I don't remember where I saw it, but it was a pasta-filled item, basically, trying to encompass that it may not necessarily be just vegetables or cheeses or meats, that you could theoretically have pasta filled with something else and it still technically be considered a ravioli and not meet the dictionary definition.
If it's not meat, cheese, or vegetables, what is it?
Yeah, I didn't really understand why they
More
made the distinction
pasta.
either. I mean,
More pasta.
You could do more pasta. You could do.
But see, pasta is made from plants. So I guess it's not vegetables, but vegetables isn't really a thing. Vegetables is a catch-all.
Right. And I think that's what it was more going for, is that you could come up with some combination of sweet and savory pasta that would actually be okay. Because, I mean, if you think about it, tomatoes are fruit, and you could put tomato in ravioli, so you'd have to include fruits in that.
Yeah, but see, when tomato is often, even though it is a fruit, because fruit has a very specific or has a specific definition or a specific criteria, or biological criteria, but not that we use it that way. Usually, we say fruit to refer to sweet plants, and vegetables to refer to non-sweet plants. But I think Merriam-Webster's definition of ravioli is a little more flexible, in that it is pasta in the form of little cases of dough containing a savory filling, as of meat or cheese. So savory filling. So that would, until you get to savory filling, then, I guess it's not pasta. So I need to know what pasta is.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, or the biggest thing that discredits like Pop-Tarts or toaster strudels or any of the envelope foods like that from being classified as ravioli, is that it's a pastry shell of some sort. It's not a pasta shell of some sort.
So I'm wondering if pastry is pasta. Pasta.
I follow that train of thought, but I mean, if you think about just the characteristics of pastries versus pastas, there's a very distinctive textural difference in all of the ones that I know of.
That's only because that's what we've been told.
It's true. So there may be some technical difference. There may not be. I don't know. I know that's where you're going with it, but that's just where I came to and said, okay, I can just stop this mental exercise here.
Okay. So,
but I did not
Oxford
verify.
Languages.
So,
well, I was going to say Oxford Languages definition of pasta is a dish originally from Italy consisting of dough made from durum wheat, extruded or stamped into various shapes and cooked in boiling water, and typically served with a sauce. So that is categorically not the same as a pastry, but
yeah, I don't know of any pastry that would not be a baked good. So.
Right, and at this point, I don't remember what I was going to rephrase my pastry question, but that's okay.
We can add Hot Pockets into the mix though, because Hot Pockets would be very similar to ravioli.
Okay, Hot Pockets.
Technically, I think it's a pastry shell of some sort.
It is.
Then it's a savory filling.
Yeah, but I was going to say, did you put them in the cardboard with the heat reflector?
Yeah, of course.
When you cooked them?
That's how they said to do it.
Yeah, but then, you had cold food in the middle. Or you had, lava edges and warm center.
Yeah, I'm going to let everybody in on a little secret. I have never microwaved food that didn't have a cold center, regardless of the microwave that I used.
Fair enough.
If you want it warm, use a toaster oven.
I think that if you want to call Pop-Tarts ravioli, go for it. Because I know what you're talking about. You know what? I'm gonna shrug off this colonizer mindset and elitist use of language and say, I know what you're fucking talking about.
You really should have taken it just a step further and talked about labeling theory and how it all comes full circle.
It's like I can't read your thoughts. That's why we talk.
Fair enough.
If I don't, and I should only be asking questions, not to correct you, but to understand you, because that is what it means to be a decent person.
Oh, that opens up so many other things.
Well, I mean, if you know who's not a decent person.
I know a few who are not decent people.
I'm thinking specifically about
an upcoming election.
Oh, I was thinking about an upcoming boycott.
So I don't exactly have like a news feed of upcoming boycotts. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Um, okay.
That could be so many different things. Like I kind of lost track of what all we were supposed to boycott 20 years ago, 10 years ago. I don't know. Whenever all the plastic stuff happened.
30 years ago, it was Disney. The Southern Baptist Church was boycotting Disney and Levi's and Dockers because Dockers is a Levi's brand, but because of their I don't know.
Acceptance of the LGBTQ plus.
It's more than it's more than acceptance, and we didn't even say LGBTQ plus back then. They were calling them the homosexual community. But
right,
yeah,
I was just trying to rephrase it in
not just
categories.
Modern times. Yeah, they're not just their acceptance, but their
recognition of them as people. I mean,
recognition of them
the fact that
yes,
it was,
embracing the fact that yeah. I think that's, and you know what, that did a jack shit.
Well, I mean,
so,
boycotts in general are
boycotts
such a funny thing, right?
They work sometimes. They work sometimes.
They work the smaller the company is, or the smaller the group is that you're trying to target. The more global a brand or company or whatever is, the more you get to a large thing, as long as it has a relatively diverse following, boycotts don't do anything. It's when you have someone like Bud Light who has a very narrow focus group that really supports the brand and drives its profits that a boycott can make a big difference. Or the Anheuser-Busch company, not Bud Light. I just always think of Bud Light because it's
same thing. Yeah. Same thing. We knew what you were talking about. We knew what this label meant. This word label was
right.
well, maybe some folks didn't, and it's good that you clarified. So,
yeah. And I do want to clarify.
Honestly, I hope we have. Hopefully, we have that many listeners.
Yeah. And I do think it's worth clarifying because Anheuser-Busch is a much larger company than just the Budweiser brands, which I think is why they have been able to weather this tumultuous time for them better than maybe they could have prior to the expansion into some of the other brands.
Yeah. Well, there is a and I hope this works out. But there is a call. It's going to be hard for me because I don't really buy that many Kellogg's products. But and they used to be the Kellogg company. They're now called Kellanova. That's the official name.
I didn't even realize that. So that's
I didn't either until I saw the Wikipedia page. But there's a call for them a boycott because of their price increase, the inflation of their foods over the last few months, and really the it's not just that, but the call for the boycott has more to do with the words of the CEO of Kellogg's. So his name it's Gary Pilnick. He is a multimillionaire CEO of Kellogg's, and his response of cereal prices having risen 28% over the last 4 years was, let them eat cornflakes, let them eat flakes. He said poor families should consider cereal for dinner, and that didn't really go over so well.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of thoughts on it. I want to add a couple of other things, though, because I think they're kind of related.
So I'll give you the whole quote. And the quote goes, I'll even set it up for you. Pilnick was on CNBC's Squawk, or Squawk on the Street, I guess that's the name of the show, in February. And he said, it was kind of a let them eat cake phrase, which was famously said by Marie Antoinette before her execution during the French Revolution. So he said, the cereal category has always been quite affordable, and it tends to be a great destination when consumers are under pressure. If you think about the cost of cereal for family versus what they might otherwise do, that's going to be much more affordable. So there's no...
Yeah, I mean... So I remember when I first saw it, I immediately had two very disparate thoughts, and it was difficult to figure out which way I actually felt. On the one hand, that's practically not wrong. It's just not nutritious, right? Like there is an element of. I remember plenty of times where we ate cereal for dinner, either because people were tired or late, or maybe it was all we had available because of other things going on. And it's like, whatever, just have. It was always touted as like have breakfast for dinner kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I do. On one hand, I do understand the sentiment from the idea of, look, cereal can be a viable source of sustenance if you're struggling. I get that. But the optics and the actual intent behind it and understanding what has changed with prices across all sorts of different grocery categories and the record profits that many companies are reporting for recent years, it makes that not be what the message is. If that was truly the message, there wouldn't be record-breaking profits. It would be more or less break-even in trying to navigate where we can price things so that people can buy it and eat, instead of maybe you should look at the least expensive option in the store for mealtime.
So he went on to say that, Pilnick went on to say that that this is in fact landing well right now. Cereal for dinner is something that is probably more on trend now, and we would expect it to continue as the consumer is under pressure.
Which is, again, just indicative of the problem. It's...
Yeah.
I mean...
So
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'd like to add that his base salary is $1 million a year, and he makes about $4 million in and more than $4 million in incentives.
Which, in the schemes of CEO pay, is not as egregious as some.
Well, yeah,
or as many.
That's right. It's not a lot of relative to other CEOs' pay. Yeah, that's not a lot of money, and that's fine. I don't think it's wrong for someone to make that much money, but to be making comments like that, I don't think. Do you think his kids are eating? Do you think his family is eating cereal for dinner out of necessity?
No, not in the least.
Not at all.
And that's why I was saying that, like, I did have two very different thought processes when I first saw it, because I do recognize some value in the message. It would be no different than anybody else saying, you know what, have you considered at least having cereal on hand as a viable option if you can't do something else? I get that. The problem is that no one should be in that situation to begin with.
Yes.
There is so much...
Cereal for supper should be something for fun, not something out of necessity.
Right. There are so many companies recording profits in the double-digit millions plus of dollars, and so many individuals absorbing such insane amounts of money. There's no reason that a child or a person anywhere in this country shouldn't be able to walk into a building and get a basic, nutritious, school meal style dinner or lunch or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be the cream of the crop from a food perspective, because we know public school lunches are not exceptional. But that type of food should be available to anyone in need at any time. That's the bottom line. And the fact that it's not is the failure, not the fact that someone in a position of trying to market and build their brand and company saying, you know what, if nothing else, maybe you should consider cereal as a staple to have on hand. Like the fact that that's even a message is so fundamentally wrong. That's the problem.
Yeah, the cereal people are supposed to be like, yes, our product is not nutritious. It is something for fun. It is a luxury.
It's tasty. It's something you have when you just want some level of whimsy in your daily intake.
Yeah.
Much like donuts. Donuts should be available to everybody.
Yes. So... yeah, so fuck that guy for saying that.
And I do want to add that like this illustrates a lot of just general anger. Not this specific example, but the example of companies continuing to break profit level records by doing everything possible to. I'm trying to think of a positive, or not positive, but trying to think of a less harsh word to use. Doing everything possible, though, to exploit opportunities to get another dime. I mean, that's unfortunately there is nothing else that you could describe that as.
Not just exploitation, but exploiting the segment of the of the population that is the currently the most exploited, I would say, and the one that needs the most protection, the one that is, at most at risk for going hungry. There used to be a thing where, fast food used to be, where people who were trying to make ends meet, like trying to fill their tummies and trying to, not die or not go to bed hungry, and that used to be an option as well. But now we're seeing these companies also try to squeeze more blood from the stone.
Well, it actually goes a little bit further. The proliferation of dollar menus would be kind of what you're referring to, and let's put a name to it, right? Because I remember when the dollar menu first all of a sudden became a thing. Like it has not been around for decades and decades and decades. It's been something that's relatively new over the past 30 years. And it was huge when I remember being able to suddenly get all sorts of things that I could eat off of the cheap menu and actually enjoy and feel good about it. But it wasn't healthy. And so as we entered a period where a number of people were able to exert pressure on companies for their unhealthy choices, they've responded and they've tried to rework parts of the menus. I mean, I know McDonald's went through a huge branding thing not too long ago where they were talking about how all of their foods were being reworked to try to be more nutritious and better for you. Now, whether that's honestly true in practice or not, I don't know. I haven't eaten at McDonald's in I don't know how long. But it's one of those things where I recognize that the pressures of other groups are pushing against fast food companies because now they are going there. They're wanting their food from there, and it's squeezing out those people who would benefit from access to the dollar menu to have something more nutritious than cereal. It's a really unfortunate cascading set of events where I would categorize it as the middle class is putting pressures on the things they consume that are actually making it less accessible for others who are not as fortunate, while also making the pressures and squeezing the middle class further and further and further. And it's almost a catch-22.
There is going to be a breaking point, and hopefully the consumer will, hopefully with a boycott, like for example the boycott that's being proposed for Kellogg's, hopefully the consumer will break the corporations, because right now they're out of control. And before we started talking about this topic, I don't know if it's makes the cut or not, but I was talking about, or we were talking about Boeing and them just trying to extract as much money in the form of stocks at the cost of passengers' lives. I mean, not just like them trying to them withholding information about how the 737 Max works and how problematic one of their systems is, and so forth, just trying to extract every single penny they possibly can. I said short-term short-term gains at expense of long-term cost, and this mindset we see. I don't know if you followed any of what's going on with Apple and in the European Union, but again, it's like a lot of times the people that running a company like Apple, they make very good decisions, and they make what's the word I'm looking for? Their position on carbon emissions is more than admirable. But at the same time, it's also the same company that is fighting tooth and nail to not be more reasonable with how they treat independent developers. And part of it is like they're stuck in the system of like, they do something, they make a certain change, and then their Wall Street doesn't like it, so their stock prices go down, and now they have maybe lost the control of the company because they get the CEO gets ousted because he didn't live up to his fiduciary responsibility.
The funny thing about
it's a mess.
The funny thing about Apple is the example here, though, is that their stock has never reflected anything that the company has done or hadn't done. And it makes it so ridiculously strange. Like the company will have a phenomenal quarter and great products, and the stock will drop 20 points
because it wasn't as good as you wanted it to. It wasn't as good as Wall Street wanted it to be. And it's like when they're selling the computer division of the company is selling, like, is more than like extremely profitable, but relative to every other computer company in the industry. But it's like, oh well, you weren't as profitable as you were 5 years ago in this area, so we don't like that, so your stock and it's just like, when did you become why are we so beholden to the fucking stock market? I mean, I know there's a lot of money to be made there, but it's out of control. You know what? It's like, hey, the stock market's, there's a problem with the stock market. Okay, turn it off. Just turn it off, because you do that every day at 4:30 Eastern. You turn it off.
There's a lot to unpack there. But the one thing that just kept jumping back to mind that I want to make sure I mention before I forget about it.
Sorry, it went long.
No, that's fine. The way any company reacts to outside influence. So thinking about like the EU changes and app loading and developer relations and all those little things, the way a company reacts to those outside influences tends to tell you more about the company's mindset and how they react to internal people wanting to affect change than any of the other positive things they might do. And this is a perfect example, because as much as I like Apple as a company for a lot of different reasons, I also hate Apple as a company for a lot of different reasons. Same reason I love other companies for different reasons, but I also hate other companies for yet more different reasons. And part of it is, there is an age component, I think, where as you get older, you start to recognize a lot of the more income or bottom line driven decisions for what they are, instead of accepting some of the more ideological explanations for why that might be the decision. And I'm not saying that you get older and you get more jaded. Like, I think it's more nuanced than that. I think you start to recognize some of the differences between this is a cultural component and this is in line with the company's philosophies, and I can buy the ideological argument here because it matches all of these other things. And then on the other hand, you can look at a decision and you can see the ideological argument and you can say, yeah, that's bullshit, because it's not matching these other things that would be in line with the company if it were a actual cultural thing. And I think it's just general life experience and exposure that gets you to a point where you get to see some of those nuances. I do think it translates to you get older, you get more jaded, and I understand why we want to simplify it that way. Uh, but I'll use me personally as a great example. There are a lot of things about corporate America that I still think are beneficial to most people. I just no longer happen to be one of them. Like, I don't benefit from immersion and experience within corporate America the way I did a decade ago. That has fueled my uh, desire to figure out what the next chapter of my life subsequently means. And for the most part, that's going to mean either self employment or predominantly self driven contractual obligations that are not as dictated and held to as standard corporate employment. And there's plenty you could unpack from that. A whole separate show we could go to. But in a nutshell, I have realized that I no longer fit the mold of what a good corporate employee would be. I don't have the mindset for it. I don't have the respect for the way companies manage and lead things anymore for me to fit in that world. I might fit in a startup pretty well, depending on, size and what it's trying to tackle. And I might fit extremely well. I would definitely fit extremely well in self-employment. I mean, if you're your own boss, you can kind of dictate the culture, right? Like, so there's a whole separate argument there. But it's as you get older and you see those changes, and it becomes more a matter of, I am no longer fulfilled by this activity, and I want to make sure that what I'm doing aligns with my beliefs and my drive for some ideological argument. And if it no longer matches, a willingness to say, yeah, this is no longer the place for me. That also becomes a major factor of, or let me rephrase, the ability to recognize that and act on it in such a way is very much a matter of privilege that not everybody has. I want to acknowledge that clear and consistently and across the board. Not everyone can say, yeah, this isn't for me and I'm going to go do something else. Because a lot of people require living paycheck to paycheck because of exorbitant expenses, inflation, and shrinkflation, and everything else. Like, let's go ahead and acknowledge that not everyone will have this path available to them. But what I really want to get to is that the same mental and behavioral processes expose themselves in that level of self-awareness and decision-making, and in identifying the corporate bullshit versus the corporate ideology and culture. And I think both are a factor of age. I don't see how a lack of age and wisdom and exposure to all these different things can't create that scenario, just like I can't see a fresh, out of college, wide-eyed person wanting to pursue a career see a lot of these other decisions for what they are. There's a huge gap in being able to understand those behaviors and nuances and correlate them to past behaviors and principles. And long story short, I just fail to see how it's not a consequence of age.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think that it's you also you said age and experience, but also frame of reference. You have like, if I can think about how I thought about things when I was 22 versus how I am now, and I've got 20 years of comparison, as adult life, so yeah, I think with 20 years from now, I'll remember, I mean, I'm as a middle-aged person, I can remember certain, things from the good old days or whatever. So,
and hopefully I always, when we get into the longer tangents, I always feel like I don't explain my viewpoint the way I want to. And it's because we don't have full-fledged notes and it's all off the cuff and just, a little inside baseball. And that's what makes the show so much fun. You should absolutely subscribe and go back and fill in a bunch of back channels. It's one of those things where I always wonder, did I actually describe it the way that it comes to mind, right? Because this is an absolutely perfect example where there are so many things that we can look at over the past, we'll say 12 years, 2 decades if you want to be kind of generous, that have shaped and changed behaviors and really redefined a number of different levels of activism in different arenas that we haven't seen in a long time. How much of that also influences the way you view a lot of the corporate elements of what it means to respond to those activist ideas, or there's got to be a better phrasing for that I'm missing. But the way companies respond to what's popular in culture and influences of the day tend to also shape a number of responses for individual employees to recognize or call out, in some instances, companies on their BS. And a lot of that is also just being better or being more aware. There's a component that is very difficult to categorize that is not based on age and experience, but is based on a level of understanding people or being empathetic or being inclusive minded. There's something else there that I think also contributes to it, that for us, unfortunately, because of our childhood and going through some transitions in general, it's more a matter of experience and trying to actively develop this idea of being better. But I think for a lot of younger generations, there's just this understanding of what it means to be empathetic and inclusive because of the environment they've been raised in that gives them a step up on that path. And it's part of why you see, I'm going to call them generational gaps. It's not the best description, but it's part of why you see certain generations require more time to reach a lot of these conclusions and to act on them, as opposed to a lot of the articles you see about younger generations being more focused on life balance or pursuits outside of work. Because that has been a recent trend as well. And I do want to acknowledge there's a difference there, and it's something that I think has to be cultivated in some of the older generations more so than something that is a good example of how we might find faith and hope in future generations by seeing the fact that there's an element of that as well from the younger crowd. I know it was an odd way to take the conversation, but it felt like it needed to be acknowledged.
Yeah. I've also gotten to places like, how are we going to land this plane? We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.
Well, I got something to talk about. It'll be really short. It's not really like a after show thing, but it could be after the.
It could be the bonus,
the outro. Yeah, the bonus after the outro, and you remember when the let me. I don't know if it was borrowed or given. I'm assuming borrowed, but let me borrow an Apple TV HD. I think it's an HD because it doesn't have 4K.
I think I just gave it to you. I don't remember saying, Because I still have an Apple TV HD boxed up as well. Like I had a ridiculous number of Apple TVs at one point.
How come?
Because I bought 2 different 4Ks when I got 4K TVs, and I didn't get rid of the HDs. So I had the first generation small black box Apple TV. Well, all right. So I've had multiple.
Did you have
generations?
Okay,
I had I had the big hard drive first generation Apple TV.
The gray one.
Yeah. Yeah, I started with the very first Apple TV.
It only had component and composite video out. It didn't have HDMI, if I'm correct.
You are correct.
All right. Did you have 40 or 160 gig?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't remember that much.
I don't know. So
pretty sure I had the 40 gig because I don't remember. I don't remember selecting anything other than the base model when I bought it. And so either there was not another model available right at first, which would not surprise me, or I just didn't dig into the options and went with the least expensive option.
I'm trying to look and see. Oh wow, it was expensive. It was $400. It was $400 for 160, and $300 for 40. That's. I mean, Apple's gotten a little bit more. Charge a little bit more for that many gigabyte difference. That double.
Yeah,
because that's you quadruple your storage for $100 extra bucks.
Yeah, but I do remember when I first bought it, I was like, what can I get, as opposed to what should I get. That conversation about what can I actually afford versus what can I go ahead and spec. But I also don't remember there being options when I very first bought. So it seems like the 160 might have been after a few months revision, or was it an actual launch difference?
I'm trying to figure out. I'm using Mac Tracker, and I'm trying to figure out. It says so. It says it was introduced. The first generation Apple TV was introduced in January of 2007 and shipped in March, and then it shows that there was a 40 gigabyte model in 2009 and a 160 gig in 2010, and it's not entirely clear to me. So it does sound like
to me
that's later.
That's funny because to me that's very clear that the 40 gig was what shipped first, and then eventually they added the 160 gig model, which would be in line with what Apple normally does anyway. But yeah, I had the very first generation, and then I replaced it with the first black box one, and then at some point I would have upgraded that one for something, probably just because I could. Because we got in with the Apple TV, we got to the point where I was like, I just want the newest one for capability or like processing power or something. Like there was not a clear. I bought 2 or 3 where it was just because it was the newest one. So that would be why I ended up eventually having a backstock of just excess Apple TVs.
Yeah, I can't tell what they upgraded between the second and third generation.
I
Apple
think
TVs.
It was just processing power.
I think you're right, because
I think is the third generation when they introduced apps, or is that the fourth generation?
I don't know. I wasn't using it. I know that so they did bump up the processors, but I was looking to see if they changed anything with connectivity. Maybe. Yeah. Wi-Fi. Oh, nope. They both had 802.11n.
I think the third generation is when they introduced limited apps, so the processing power would have been important.
Really. See, I find that hard. I have a hard time accepting that to be true because the second generation had an A4 and that was in the iPhone 4. So
yeah, but they took forever to open up the Apple TV to developers.
I do remember that being a long. I do remember it being a long time because I was like, I remember thinking it was like I have no interest in the Apple TV because I couldn't run Plex on it.
Right. And so fun fact. If you did enough finagling and working with stuff on the very first generation Apple TV, you could actually run a bastardized version of Xbox Media Center on that particular thing, which Xbox Media Center eventually forked into XBMC and Plex as 2 different products. which is how I learned about Plex to begin with.
I learned about Plex from where did I learn about Plex? Oh, I found it. Third generation TV added 1080p. Second generation
okay.
only supported 720.
That would make sense why I bought a third generation then, because I would have had a 1080p capable TV.
Then why? So now it makes me question. It's like, why didn't they call that one the Apple TV HD? Because it wasn't until the next generation.
Because they didn't need to differentiate the HD model until there was talk of 4K support.
Well, so
because technically 720p is also HD.
It is HD, but the original Apple TV was 720. You had to use component cable. I'm just assuming. I'm assuming that you can't do HD on composite, can you?
I think when they did the 720, they had HDMI capability. I think the composite cable was only in the very first gray box version.
Yes,
but yes, you can do 720 over composite.
You can do 720 over composite?
Yep. Composite was the first HD standard, so 720.
Oh, wait. Did the original also have HDMI?
I don't remember. I don't think so. So what are you thinking is composite? Are you thinking composite is component?
Composite is yellow for video, red and white for stereo audio.
I'm actually using the wrong term. Component is the separated out RGB.
Yes,
video.
Three video signals and 2 audio signals.
Yeah,
I thought
component is where you could do HD. Composite you cannot.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're tracking.
Sorry. I was just using the wrong terms. Yep.
I didn't remember that the original Apple TV had HDMI, but Mac Tracker is saying that it does.
It could have. I know I did not use HDMI connectivity with the original Apple TV that I recall.
Yeah. Interesting. So I was thinking that it did not have HDMI, but Mac Tracker is saying that it does. And
does it say that it has component as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay, because I very vividly remember having component cables with my original Apple TV because I bought them from. Oh God, I'm not going to remember the name of the company. It was the premium
Monster
white
cables?
No, it was not Monster. It was a Mac specific brand. They made white cables.
Not Belkin.
No, it was. Who was it? Because I even still have my optical audio cable from them and my component cable from them. Like I have them packed away. I just put them back in. So I just went through all my cables a couple of weeks ago and put them in the Milwaukee pack-out boxes and with dividers. So I put hands on these cables. I see them in my mind. I cannot remember who makes them. They're white cables, nice thick quality. They're very similar to Monster cables in build, but they were not price gouging like Monster.
Yeah, I only wasted my money on 2 sets of Monster cables ever.
I've bought a couple of Monster cables when they've been relatively appropriately priced. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they were on sale or if it's just when I bought them, they were comparable to the alternative cables. I normally just order my cables online, but that's only been relatively recent years.
So the 2 Monster cables I bought I bought a Monster. I think I found it on sale, and I bought it for the original Xbox. I still have it, and I bought a Monster cable for the Nintendo Wii, and it made sense to me. Like I knew it didn't. I think what it gave me was progressive scan or better progressive scan.
Maybe. I mean, cables are so funny because they talk about gold and all-in connectors and everything else, but that only matters if the rest of the cable is something other than copper.
I was gonna say that only matters if you're gonna treat the cable like shit.
I've
not ever had my cables corrode like that.
Yeah,
that's not where it's corroding.
There's so much about cable marketing and all that's hilarious. The only thing that I remember making a big difference is whether the brand of quality or brand of cable was known for its quality or not. So a cheap knockoff cable could have issues in build and construction that would affect performance. But otherwise, cable is pretty much a cable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you see the this monster cable I have. It's got this extra shielding around it, and a not a wire. What is the nylon mesh that you see in wire harnesses?
You mean the covering or the internal bracing?
Yeah, the cover. No, the exterior. On the exterior, the cover.
Yeah, the covering. I know what you're talking about. Like today, they market it as braided cabling. It's
the braided cabling is different. I feel like than what I'm talking about. This is a plastic sheath that is a mesh.
Oh, you're just talking about the more durable outer covering.
Yeah. It's really good if you are
pulling it through walls.
Right. I was going to say putting cables next to where there'd be prevents abrasion. But these are cables that are just getting plugged into the TV. They're sitting behind. They are not they're over engineered, if anything. So
yeah, I mean, and sorry, I was thinking about some of the more modern cabling. I know what you're talking about though, because I have a couple of cables where you have the plenum or plastic sheathing, and then you have this braided outer layer that is just a protective layer. That's all it is.
Right, and it's plastic, and it costs them less than a cent for each cable, but they charge $10 extra for it or something like that. So it does have a nice feel,
and it does make a lot of sense if you have it in a environment that requires durability. It's just that most people don't.
No.
So that was a long tangent for what started out as something about letting you borrow the Apple TV.
Yeah, so I you let me borrow the Apple TV, and I'm like, oh yes, I love it, and I wouldn't want to go back, and then when the third generation Apple TV 4K came out, I was like, there was a few articles written about how much differently it was constructed than the second generation. And I remember Fred and I were talking about, get your hands on a second generation before they're gone. And I looked up the specs, and the second generation is twice as heavy as the third generation.
Yeah, I have one of each. I have one of the second gen and one of the third gen.
Oh, you got a third gen?
Yeah, so in this house we have 3 TVs instead of 2, so I added one more TV 4K for the basement, and so I just purchased a new one,
Makes sense. Yeah, that tracks. Well, I was gonna say, my next TV purchase will be a 4K TV, and I'm hoping that's relatively soon. And I just have been keeping my eyes on them on eBay and Facebook Marketplace, and I found one. Dude was selling second generation 4K. It was brand new. He had opened the box, but I was like, he sold it for $80. And I was like, I'm taking it, because trying to find them, most of the places I'm seeing them, they're still $130 is the best price I've seen other than this one. And I saw this one for $80, and I was like, hey, can I try it out? And because I just wanted to make sure that nobody, the Apple ID was not still logged into. And he kind of looked at me weird because I didn't realize it was brand new. And I opened the box up, and the plastic was still, okay. I told him, I was like, I just wanted to try it to make sure that there was nobody was logged in, and I couldn't log them out. And I see that nobody has ever logged in, because there's no way to get power to it, because it was still wrapped up. And so I picked up a 4K Apple TV 4K.
Nice. I need to look and get a backup. I say that. So this is obviously the older computer generation person style, me coming out. It's like I've had some odd issues with my Apple TV in the living room not wanting to power, not having a display. And I get that I don't necessarily have a typical setup where I don't have the Apple TV going straight to the TV. I have it going to a receiver that has the whole pass-through signal to the TV.
Matter. It does, but it shouldn't matter.
Right. And so I don't know for sure that it's not just an odd signaling error that doesn't detect coming off the standby, and so I have to unplug and plug back in the Apple TV, and then the picture shows up, right? I've had it happen twice. That's more than enough to not be a coincidence on a signaling error, but it's also not enough to be indicative of a problem, other than, maybe a particular version of the software created this environment where it's not acting the way I want. I don't know. But because of this, I have started debating, do I start looking for another second gen Apple TV 4K to replace that one with if I have problems? Or am I going to feel horrible if I just buy whatever new version Apple TV 4K, right? Because it's like, I have the version that was over-engineered, and knowing that, it's difficult to accept just getting one of the newer ones that's more economically engineered, for lack of better phrasing.
See, I look at that. I don't think they are trying to, I don't see that as trying to squeeze more. The margins are, they might be better, but they did lower the price, a decent amount.
Yeah, I'm not trying to frame it in a negative light at all. Like I think that my point is more, I like the idea of an over-engineered box.
Yeah,
and so it's like, do I look for that, or am I fine regardless of which way I go? It's more that conundrum than it is anything Apple did.
I'm pretty sure before you do that, you gotta go straight to your TV and test it that way. But
yeah, I'm certainly not going to replace anything without making sure that there's not some other signaling issue, because it could very well be the fucking cable, right? Like that's true. That's the annoying thing about playing.
It's not
with
a
AV
monster
stuff.
cable.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll order a monster cable to test against, just for it to be
no.
No, I'd go to Cable Matters and order whatever their premium brand is, and it'd be half the price.
Honestly, I'm quite sad that Apple stopped making HDMI cables.
I don't know. They have a hit or miss track record with cables. I love the new braided USB-C and Lightning cables.
I do too.
Those are great. I think that's what it should have been all along. But those cables are phenomenal. So if they were to make HDMI cables now, I think I would absolutely adore them and be willing to pay the premium. I don't know if I miss the older cables though.
I was just so impressed by how thin they got that wire.
I get that.
About thinness isn't important. And so I have one that's connected to the main TV downstairs. I have the Apple one, but I also have another one in my and there is an alternative to it. There's Belkin's Ultra HD high. They have a HDMI cable that looks just like Apple's, other than it says Belkin. And at one point, Apple said, actually, it doesn't even say Belkin. It says HDMI. At one point, I think Apple had their logo on the HDMI cable, but then now it's just a black cable. There's nothing on it. But I've got one. I have one that I carry in my bag, so like if I want to connect my computer to a television, I can do that. But I just didn't. I just don't like that they took it away.
I get that. I don't even know what brand cable I use now. Most recently, I just purchased the highest rated off of Amazon for 8K connectivity, because I thought I was having an issue with a couple of cables just not being able to support. I'm not going to say current protocols, because it's not what my equipment doesn't support the most current HDMI stuff anyway. But I was thinking there was an issue with general manufacture date and what my cables were capable of, and so just went to Amazon, looked for high-speed 8K cables, and chose one that was extremely high rated with enough ratings to make me feel like it wasn't, Chinese inflation on ratings. And those have been great. I don't have any complaints, but I don't know. I do wonder if that's not part of my issue with the living room setup. I have not had that same issue in the basement, and I'm using the same cables in the basement, so it does make me question a little bit. But I have two different receiver setups between the basement and the living room. So knowing that the receiver in the basement is drastically newer than the receiver in the living room and is capable of 8K, whereas the one in the living room is 4K only, and there can be some communication differences there, and like there are still enough differences that I could still have a cable issue and it just not be manifesting itself consistently between both locations. And the only way I could really isolate whether it's something with the receiver or the Apple TV or the cable would be to duplicate the setups completely, in both locations. And of course, I'm not going to spend the money for that. There's a reason I have two different setups. I have a more modern setup in the basement, even though I have a worse speaker setup, because it was less expensive than getting what I had in the living room and better quality, but just because of advances in technology and time, right? Like it's just... It's hilarious, but maybe I'll move the receiver I have in the basement up to the living room. Maybe I'll swap them at some point and see if that alleviates my issues. It just seems like overkill to try to do that when neither TV is capable of anything more than 4K anyway. Like it's what's it matter?
Yeah.
If the cables are rated for 8K, the receiver in the basement is 8K compatible.
It should work. It should absolutely work.
So. And again, I'm still not sold that I have an issue yet either. It could very well be just that particular software update from Apple. Like they're not flawless in their implementation either.
It's bonkers, really.
It is asinine how much question there is in AV components and connectivity. There are standards. Why is it so fucking difficult for you to adhere to the standards? And it's because the standards don't actually describe everything in detail either. Again, I get it. It's just... It's annoying.
It really is. It really is.